Some memes don't crash to you, they even tiptoe, slip through the cracks aboard an airy days, and before you realize it. They very ain't the finish inside your chest. It has been 2 years since that single afternoon, and I still catch myself holding my breath whenever I remember it. At first I convinced myself I'd invented the whole thing, that I'd stitched meaning into glances that were never there. And to silences that were only silence. But I didn't invent anything that looked at me, really looked the way no one had. In longer than I could match, and something in me that had been asleep for years opened its eyes. My name doesn't Mete, but for the sake of the story, you can call me Elena. I was the dead 9 then. Married 11 years to a man named Victor, who made his living moving money on the Wild Feste, then he ever moved toward me. On paper away. Life was flawless. A house with wisteria climbing the porch, 2 luxury cars that smelled permanently over port coffee, que landes full of charity galas we attended separately. Inside the house, though. So I had gone thin Victor came home, only long enough to unpack and repack. Day beside my check the way you check a box and a form, we hadn't argued in years because arguing requires. Two people to care enough to raise their voices. We had perfected the art of quiet coexistence. I told myself that was maturity most days I almost believed it, then came Julian Victor's son from his first marriage, 19. Just finished his first year at college out west, his mother had married a tech millionaire. WHO wanted a child-free state in Napa, so Julian landed on our doorstep with wonderful vegans, a kind of polite, half smile that hides everything. I was taller than his father now, getting the way people are when they've already learned the world doesn't always listen. I said thank you for every glass of water. Carried grows eggs without being asked, and noticed when the orchids on the kitchen island needed water before it did. Small things, then just things. At first it felt like warmth returning to a house, left to illuminated, and the one day into the kitchen, while he cooked tending against the counter. Asking about the difference between time and rosemary as if the answer actually mattered to him. I left at my sarcastic remarks the way Victor used to. Back when my sarcasm still felt playful instead of defensive. I told myself I was simply grateful for company. I told myself a lot of things. One Thursday in el spring, Victor flew to Singapore for 10 days. The house settled into an even deep hush. Julian studied in the sunroom, headphones on, pencil tapping against his knee. He drifted from room to room, watering plants that didn't need it. Rearranging books he already read. He was standing up, synchronizing a single coffee cup for 70 me when I appeared in the doorway, barefoot, wearing an outright watchet. Se la afternoon lights slid across the floorboards, and the edges of his hair gold. Mind if I keep you company? Asked. I should have said he was fine alone. Instead he handed him a knife and a zucchini and told him to make the pieces thin enough to see through. We moved around each other, the way people do when they secretly rehearsed it in their heads, our elbows brushed. The blade of his knife flashed. I cut the synapses open his skin and felt something low in my stomach tilted, like a glass of water nudged too close to the edge. We talked about nothing important and everything sacred. It told me about growing up feeling like a suitcase someone kept forgetting to claim. I had myself telling him about the way Victor used to try secals on my back when we fell asleep. How one day the secals stopped and he never asked why. The confession slipped out soft and mortifying. But Julian only nodded like he understood the precise weight of that particular grief. When the sauce began to bubble, he reached past me for the wooden spoon, his arm crossed in front of me. Slow enough that he could have stepped away. He didn't. For one heartbeat the whole kitchen narrowed to the place where his lip raised my wrist, then the moment passed. And we finished dinner like two polite strangers. WHO and they just looked straight into each other's loneliness. That night I lay awake beside Victor's empty side of the bed and felt the house breathing around me. I told myself it was nothing. I told myself it was ridiculous. I was very good at telling myself things. The next evening, a storm rolled in of the sound, the kind that knocks the power out for hours. I lit candles along the hallway because darkness still makes me feel 12 years old and afraid of monsters. Julian found me in the living room, staring at a train, streaking the windows like someone claimed to get in. I carried two mugs of tea and set one in my hands without asking if he wanted it. We sat on opposite ends of the couch while thunder moved overhead like furniture being rearranged in the sky. Minutes collected into an hour. Seconds bent lower, our voices grew softer. As if speaking too loudly, might shatter whatever fragile thing was forming between us. Yes, so quietly almost missed it. Whether I ever felt like he was living inside someone else's life, he left. A sound more like a sob trying to disguise itself. Every single day, I said the shifted closet not much, just enough that the cushion dipped and the space between us shrank to the width of a heartbeat. I could feel warmth radiating from his arm, inches from mine. The storm growled, lightning lit the room white for an instant, and I saw his face turned toward me, unguarded. Asking a question ain't yet put into words, he knew what would happen if he moved even slightly. He knew exactly where the line was drawn across the carpet in candlelight. He also knew how long it had been since anyone had looked at me like he was the NC instead of the FTTAT. S8 my name, Elena, not se careful MAMHID. Used the first week, not the neutral U, FLVcan, when Big T was home. Essay did like they've been tasting it for days. It turned toward him, Serum tilted, his hand lifted, hesitant. And brushed a strand up hair from my cheek with the same reverence they used Vic Celie when he asked if he could sketch me while he read in the window seat. He still kept the drawing hidden in the back of my underwear drawer. Pressed flat between the pages of a book, Big T would never open. I don't remember who closed the final distance. Maybe it was both of us, meeting in the middle the way too. People do when they've been starving for the same impossible thing. His mouth found mine soft, careful. Like he was afraid he might vanish if he pressed too hard. I kissed him back with all the hunger I'd been swallowing for years. It wasn't wild, it wasn't reckless. It was achingly tender. The kind of kiss that feels like finally exhaling after holding your breath since childhood. We didn't tear clouds of within the rush. There in the flickering dark, we drank hemming thereof and thunder rolling away into the distance. We undressed each other the way you unwrap something sacred, you terrified of breaking, every touch asked permission. Every silent adite, I whispered, is this okay, against my collarbone, and the answer be pulling him closer. When I slid inside me, it felt less like sex and more like recognition. Like two shattered things, discovering they fit together after all. Afterward we lay tangled on the couch, beneath the throw blanket, my mother-in-law gave us for our wedding. His head rested on my chest. My fingers moved through his hair without my permission, neither. Of a spoke there was nothing. To say that we weren't anite, sepa we came back on. Sometime after 3, says Adam. Brightness felt obscene. We dressed in silence, avoiding each other's, and went to our separate bedrooms like children sneaking back into the house after curfew. Morning ate grey and ordinary. Victoria's side of the bed was still cold. Julian ate breakfast standing up. Second, backpack already slammed over one shoulder. Left for campus without looking at me. He stood at the sink grabbing a pen that was already clean and felt the weight of what W didn't settle into my bones like wet cement. For weeks we moved down each other like ghosts who shared the same haunting, polite not sincere. Always separate rows, a least at him watching me. Sometimes when I thought he wouldn't notice. His face unreadable, he wanted to ask if he hated me, he wanted to ask if he felt it too. So way that night glowed inside ordinary days like a coal you can't extinguish. He never found the cage. Victor came home, left again, came home. Left again, the house kept its secrets. Julian moved into the basement guest suite for quite a while he studied. We became experts at never being alone in the same room. Then one Sunday in late November, I found a note on my pillow. His handwriting, careful and slanted, I still know it by heart. I am sorry. I never should have asked you to let me in. You deserve someone who can stay. Jotache was gone before dinner. A text from Victor 2 days later. Julian decided to finish the semester on campus and stay with friends over break. No further explanation. I stood in the basement room I barely used and found the sketch I'd done at me that fest. Month, the one where he looked peaceful and unaware. Anything was coming, the last it prepped against, se le implied en a leyenda. Goodbye in 1-2 years have passed. Victor, and they still orbit each other in the same silent dance. Some nights I take out the sketch and the note and lay them side by side on the bed. I trace the line of my young joint pencil and one day is that woman ever really existed or if she was only a bechan. Julian needed to see so he could believe softness was still possible. I don't know where he is now. I head through a mutual friend that he transferred to a school in Oregon. The TS painting, the T doesn't come home for holidays. I hope he's happy. I hope he found someone who can let him out in the open. Without shame, without stormy litrums and candle wax and the terra footsteps in the hallway. And me, I still watch the orchids. I still set an extra place, it's a table out of habit, and then quietly remove it. Some evenings when the light is thin and golden and the house feels too large. I sit on the same couch, pull the same blanket across my lap, and let myself remember the weight of his head on my chest and away. For one night, it was not invisible. People will say it was wrong. They say took advantage, that it should have been stronger, wiser. Better, maybe they're right, or maybe sometimes hunger is older and louder than every rule we were taught to obey. Maybe love, real love, even the brief, impossible kind. The eyes without permission, and lips a mark nothing can erase. I don't know what you think of me when this ends. I only know that, for one night in a house gone dark, someone saw me or loved me, separates the buried, and the years of good menace and forced smiles. And for those few hours, I remembered what it felt like to be real. If you've ever been so lonely, you forgot the shape of your own name. If you've ever been touched, gently, carefully. Be someone who looked at you like sunrise after the longest night. Then maybe you understand, not for GV.UNDRSTAND. Because a design rarely announces itself with sirens. More often it sleeps in wearing the face of someone, often duty during a storm. Asking if you're okay when no one else remembers to ask. Sometimes. It sounds like rain and a roof and a whispered name inse. Dark sometimes it feels like coming home to a place you didn't know. You left and sometimes, just sometimes, it is the only thing that reminds you you're still alive.